stacked the agenda really set us up for success there, because thankfully what we are working on within the state of Nevada is right in line with a lot of the trends that were just briefed to you. So to get this rolling, let's go ahead. We're going to start with a brief introduction to the agency. I don't think we have any brand new members, and so I won't go into too much of this, as brevity is of the essence today. So our job is straightforward. Our job is to deliver secure shared resources across the executive branch. And we definitely put our work in over the past 6 to 9 months. That also includes the enterprise backbone of services, to include our service desk, computing, network, cybersecurity, physical security, and other digital platforms. Our main charge is outlined in our legislative declaration 242.071, where it charges our agency with the responsibility of securing, coordinating, orderly, economical processing of data and information across state government, to ensure the secure and economical use of information systems, and to prevent the unnecessary proliferation of equipment and personnel. So what does that mean? That means all of the very intelligent people in the legislature and the governor's finance office and the governor's office have determined that runaway technology, duplicative technology is not a good idea. So that is why our agency exists. Now, I think we spent a significant portion of the special session talking about the cybersecurity event. So I'm not going to go into details on that, except for me taking some point of privilege to say thank you. Thank you to the legislative body. Thanks to the governor's office for supporting us during that special session with historic policy and funding efforts to better secure the state of Nevada. One of the things that the cybersecurity event really highlighted for us is that recovering well and bouncing back, obviously that's incredibly important. I think we had a historic recovery when compared to other cybersecurity events of similar size. And one of the things that we wanted to do is be as transparent and open about that entire process. And that has been really lauded across the nation for our work on that recovery and restoration effort. One of the big things is we restored our environment without paying a dime to the threat actor. So we did not recontribute to the threat actors, the criminals, so they can go back and attack someone else. Some of the key observations were the identity, visibility, and disciplined operations have to be enterprise capabilities. There was a significant amount of disparate systems across the executive branch. There was a lot of complexity that we had to go through and identify that could have potentially caused the recovery to take a little bit longer. We need to fix the foundations, and with the support that the legislative body and the governor's office provided us during the special session, I think we have a solid foundation to move forward on. Once again, AB1 gave us the right structure. AB1 established the authority to launch the Security Operations Center for the whole of state cybersecurity maturity. It provided requirements for annual reporting to increase transparency on what is going on with cybersecurity across the executive branch. It reinforces expectations around policy. The legislature wants us to focus on policy and apply that equally across the executive branch, and we heard you. It moves forward coordinated efforts when it comes to cybersecurity. We're trying to break down the silos. We're trying to break down the haves and the have-nots across the executive branch and then across the state as a whole. And it provided critical cybersecurity investment funding. we can't just buy a tool and make all of our cybersecurity problems go away. It takes a concerted effort to ensure that we have the governance, the policies, the statutes, all in alignment to better secure the executive branch. Some of the things that we did immediately after to help better secure the state is we focused on our identity structure. We're leaning into zero trust practices with a tiered identity structure, ensuring that the standard user and computer accounts cannot affect major servers and other systems and critical systems within the executive branch. And that is a gold standard when it comes to identity and segregation of identity and logins. We identified tools that didn't work well for us and didn't protect the state. And we have since replaced those. One of which was our endpoint protection. Across all of the endpoints in the executive branch, we have removed the platform that failed us, and we have now implemented a modern industry best endpoint protection. With the SIEM, or the Security Information and Bit Management, we're also launching a brand new tool there, which will give us better visibility across the executive branch so we can identify if and where we see incidents or indicators of compromise, so we can action on that and get IT teams in to remediate and mitigate and prevent the attack from happening before it launches. And another key component is the physical access security, the looking more towards multi-factor authentication to be applied universally across the executive branch. Once again, this is a standard. Governance is a key component to better securing Nevada. Like I mentioned, having tools is great. You need tools in order to be able to action on the intelligence. You need tools to be able to identify where there is issues. You need tools to be able to scan. And so tools is a key component, but almost just as important is making sure that we have the governance structures in place for how technologies come into the executive branch. How are those technologies being verified as secure before they're launched, before they're brought in? We've made significant efforts here in the past 6 months with some key policies. But we didn't make these policies in a vacuum. One of the things that our office has launched is the State Technology Governance Committee, which is comprised of experts from across the executive branch that have the ability to speak for and make decisions for their agencies. We all know that shared governance is good governance, and making policy decisions in a vacuum generally throws up more barriers for you in the future. So that's why we leaned in on that. Some notable policies that we've launched in the past few months is we have launched a CIO policy for defining the process to which, if we identify that there is a duplicative technology request, that we have a conversation with those agencies, identify where the gaps is between what they want and what we have at the enterprise level, to try to reduce that duplicative technology across the executive branch. We're doing that for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the legislature, to the taxpayers that fund our organization, to make sure that we're not wasting money. If we already have a solution in place, and the legislature has funded my agency in order to provide that solution across the executive branch, that should be the solution that agencies are utilizing, unless there's a clear business justification why that solution doesn't fill their needs. And so we're really leaning heavily into that. We've also launched a requirement for GovRAMP security evaluations on all third-party cloud tools that are coming into our environment. GovRAMP is an organization that ensures that those products and services meet NIST 800.53 standards for security controls. And it's not just a point in time. They do ongoing assessments on those applications to ensure that they are still meeting those security standards. And it creates a conversation and some visibility between us and those third-party providers, because that is a significant area of risk for us. We're not in the third-party providers' IT shops. We don't see how they're managing their tools. This gives us visibility there. And another recent policy that we launched is a policy to work agencies off of non.gov websites. .gov is a very simple way to mitigate fraud across our constituency. We can communicate to residents that if they see a .gov website, that there is a very significant chance that that website's legit. We're seeing now out in the wild that adversaries are using AI tools to rapidly copy legitimate websites and then spoof the URL so it's confusing to someone who's moving fast and clicking fast, and they might end up on an illegitimate website versus the legitimate government services website. So one way that we can mitigate that is by ensuring that if your website is providing government services, it has a .gov at the end of that URL to provide that level of confidence. One of the challenges that we're having with the governance that we're deploying is agencies that have an exemption from our services. So we are working through that to ensure that we are still having that partnership level conversation with those agencies, even if they are listed in NRS 242.131 as being exempt from our services. So we are working on that because we still want to reduce the complexity in our environment to make it simpler to secure. Some of the major initiatives and projects that we have ahead of us. The IT financial management system. We were funded to launch this within the Governor's Technology Office because we as the Governor's Technology Office want to be able to provide that visibility in what goes into our rates. How are we doing our rate calculations? How are we doing our utilization calculations? And we want to provide that to all of our stakeholders, including the legislature. We don't want a rate black box where we're just throwing stuff on the wall and hoping something sticks. We want to provide that level of transparency and be able to do the math and show the math. Another effort is we're launching an initiative for statewide identity. I think I've had some conversations with some stakeholders here where our job is to make accessing government services easier and more apparent for our constituents. If they're having to use different usernames and passwords for every single government site that they're trying to get onto, that's not us doing our job. That is making things more complicated. On the cybersecurity perspective, it also is less secure to do that, because if that one individual's email gets compromised, then we can't shut down all access all at once for that individual. We would have to figure out how many usernames and passwords they have across the entire state. So we're working on that right now. We've got a great stakeholder group that's charging forward on that. We want to treat identity as enterprise infrastructure. We want it to be provided as a service to agencies. We made significant progress in our content management system replacement. This is an ARPA-funded initiative that will continue on with operational funding moving forward. There was a significant amount of non-standard websites that were out there. We're trying to bring them into a singular platform to help us not only make it easier to secure it and make sure that those web platforms are getting the patches, the updates, the other security tools applied to it, but we also want to reduce the duplicative spend of other websites, other web platforms, web hosting platforms that we're seeing across the executive branch. More of what's coming next. We are in conversations now and in a planning stage to hopefully bring the state's first chief privacy officer to bear. We felt that during the cyber event, having our own dedicated chief privacy officer that's looking out for the constituents and their data that is stored in our environments would be incredibly useful. But it's not just for during events. we want the state chief privacy officer to drive privacy program management to ensure that there is training on protecting constituent data and PII, personal identifiable information. This individual would also be responsible for compliance and risk assessments, policy development for protecting sensitive data across the executive branch. And then they would also oversee data sharing policies as well. They would support that with the state chief data officer. We are also in the planning stages now with stakeholders to envision what the operationalization of the state ERP looks like. The project, from what I understand, is going well, and the timing will be right for us to be having conversations now about long-term sustainability and what it takes to support that ERP looking forward. So we are in those conversations, and ultimately, we're going to keep on focusing on governance and bringing in the tools necessary to help better secure the executive branch. We're also going to look at, as we're moving through the SOC and building that out, working with partners from across the state, from Clark County to NSHE, to really hammer down what the student pipeline looks like, what services we're going to be able to provide from the statewide security operations center, and we're making significant headway there. We're already in conversations with multiple NSHE institutions about what internship pipeline looks like to bring in those students into the security operations center to give them real hands-on experience and train them here and hopefully to keep them here. And then we're also looking at launching a threat intelligence platform in the very near future that we can provide out as a service to not just the executive branch agencies, but also to NSHE, municipals, and any other subdivisions of government. Kind of going back to the previous presenter, where Assemblyman Nguyen talked about the collaboration opportunities between the legislature and the executive branch. We do have language now existing in NRS 242 that allows my office to deem certain records confidential when it comes to cyber events, when it comes to those types of issues, that if that information was made public, it could further harm the state. So I believe that we have the right language in place now. I think we just need to have conversations about what do the mechanics look like for those conversations. If we do set up a physical location, a SCIF, those are generally reserved for federally classified conversations. If something is secret, top secret, et cetera, that's when it would happen in a SCIF. But I believe with the language that we already have, thanks to the special session, I think we can have those conversations in a confidential manner and still protect that information from disclosure that could potentially hurt the state. So I wanted to touch on that. And then beyond that, I will stand for any questions and see if there's anything that we can work on together.
Thank you again for joining us and for the presentation. We'll start off with Assemblymember Nguyen.
I didn't want to go before Senator Neal, but oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. I just didn't want to, skip my turn. Thank you, Mr. Galuzzi, for your work with me during the regular session and the special sessions. I really appreciate your work on AB1 during special. And I'm glad to hear some of these updates regarding some of the progress you made with your team since November of last year. I think I have a couple questions, if the chair would indulge, is that there are mentions when we work on AB1 doing special, we expanded the language to include, regional and local jurisdictions such as school districts, right? So that they are able to utilize the services that you have, because obviously your primary focus for your office is within the state agencies. Can you give me an update on how that's going in terms of your collaboration across school district in the states?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. As far as school districts K through 12, we're still in the very early stages on the planning on what services we're going to be able to provide out to them. And so I think our next steps is really bringing in that stakeholder community to see where their gaps potentially are. Already in existing legislation, if they reach out to us, we can provide levels of support for them. But as far as standing up a program that's, proactively providing services, we don't have a lot of that already built yet. We're still working on the threat intelligence platform. Once we get that threat intelligence platform, that'll be really the phase one of the first things that we launch out to them. With cybersecurity, one of the biggest gaps that we have right now is it's really the sharing of intelligence. It's very disparate right now with support from national organizations or other industry-specific threat intelligence sharing platforms. But our goal is to have a Nevada threat intelligence sharing platform that we can then provide that out to our K through 12 and to our municipals as just a value add service from my office.
And I look forward to getting reading on that as you make your progress with those agencies. So thank you for leading the way on that part. The other questions I had is that you mentioned in the past, we had some challenges in terms of each of the agencies itself had their own way of doing things. For example, there may not be an equivalent of, you inside that particular agency. So when you have this governance group of pretty much a POC from every single agency within the executive branch, are these folks full-time role is to do what it is that you're doing, or they're doing things that is on top of what they're doing on a daily basis, and this is just something that they do on the side to go with you in terms of getting some consistency across the board in terms of policies and the ability to keep up with all these changes that you are facing?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. It's a bit of a mixed bag. And so we have a pretty wide disparity of IT maturity within the agencies, and a lot of that is by design, whether or not they've been able to stand up, and this problem goes back decade plus, whether or not they've been able to stand up their own mature IT organization within their agency, and then once that happens, there is a drive towards independence and doing things their way, versus some agencies that have little to no IT support within their agency. And so their inclination is to get the vast majority of their direct support from GTO. And so what we did with the State Technology Governance Committee is we didn't want just the IT leader from across the executive branch. We wanted a good mix of business leader, IT leader, and cybersecurity leader, a part of that, so we can hear a variety of voices. So when we're establishing state IT policy, we're doing so with each of those voices at the table. We do have a state information security committee that is made up of information security officers or security focused individuals from across all of the executive branches agencies. But even with that group, there is some disparity between whether or not it's a ITP 2 or 3 level position, or is it a master IT professional level position. So you have some disparity there across the executive branch entities.
So I look forward to work with you more offline on figuring this out, because I think there should be some sort of uniformity across all agencies in terms to the cybersecurity policies and protocol and execution, because at the end of the day, when one thing is being shut down, it's going to affect their daily work and nothing can be done. So hopefully that will be the next step of thinking, because as we look into some of the technology innovations and all these changes in how we do business, we have to have a kind of like a system-wide strategy and not, one agency doing this and the other agency doing that. And at the end of the day, we're going to have this problem versus trying to address it heads on. Chair, if I can ask one more. Thank you. You mentioned earlier in the presentation about spoofing in terms of, bad actors out there pretend to be state agencies. And I know I get that. In my district and even in my own family, my mother frequently send me text messages and says, hey, the DMV just texted me and said, I need to pay this fine before my car get towed, right? And so what are we doing about those kind of challenges that Nevadans are facing? And I know a lot of these bad actors may be foreign. It could be, overseas that are sending these texts and people would click on it and then their money would be gone. And obviously it did not come from one of us. What are we proactively doing in that space to make sure that Nevadans are not defrauded from those kind of activities?
Thank you, Assembly Member, for the question. That is a Timothy Galuzzi for the record. That is a significant issue. I know my family members have reached out to me on that. We see it on social media every time something gets launched, a new round gets launched. And I think you highlighted the primary issue there, that a lot of these, text spoofs or document spoofs, and then leading to website spoofs, a lot of those are from threat actors that could be potentially outside of the United States or outside of Nevada. And it is incredibly difficult to combat. One of the strategies that we're using to kind of drive towards mitigating those is that .gov strategy. So that way we can communicate out to constituents that if you know that you're on a .gov website, that's the legitimate website. And I think that goes a long way for mitigating it. But the only other way that we have right now, the only other capability we have right now is just educating our constituencies, letting them know that no, the DMV is not going to text you. A sheriff or police officer is not going to text you about paying a fine for jury duty, and really working on those education campaigns to help mitigate those from the user side.
Thank you, Chair.
Next, we will go to Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I had a question. It was on, so it was a slide on the CMS progress where it says move off end of life platform and sustain the enterprise CMS after ARPA bridge funding. How much ARPA money did you guys actually receive, OCIO, in ARPA money?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I actually don't have those numbers right in front of me. But from what our status reports have shown is that we are not at risk from not being able to expend that ARPA money. Those ARPA projects have all been incredibly successful. I believe one of them was a infrastructure project within our microwave environments. This content management system is just another example of a project that is actually ahead of schedule and is on track for budget as well. So, but what I can do is I could follow back up with the actual dollar amounts for those ARPA projects.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to understand, because I thought maybe the original allocation in 21 was 54 million, and then you guys have been working that down. But when you have we need money after, I was just super interested in what does that mean? Because you guys also do cost allocation to other agencies. So other agencies pay for services. So with AB1, adding INCHI and CCSD, are they now under a cost allocation agreement with OCIO?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Tim Galuzzi for the record. So I'm going to kind of break that up into a couple pieces. The first piece is going to be the content management system specific. So what we were funded for was really the project work for that and the licensing while we were in project. And that money is going to be fully expended appropriately. The ongoing costs of the content management system, it would be just for the infrastructure type costs that we would charge across all using entities and across the executive branch. And so those are just hosting and licensing, which is pretty typical for cloud-based products. At this point, there's no plan to extend those costs out beyond the executive branch. I don't believe at this point we're planning on providing website hosting for non-executive branch entities, so we wouldn't extend that out via the Security Operations Center. Our primary vehicle for providing services out to non-executive branch entities, although we are authorized in statute to provide other services, would be through the Security Operations Center, and they'd be security services specifically, and not other hosting type services at this point.
If I may, this is Darla
So
Dodge.
there is no cost allocation to NSHE or CCSD or other school boards? Do they have to pay?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Not at this point. We have not defined a rate structure or cost allocation or final funding structure for the Security Operations Center. When it was established via AB1, it was done through general fund with the idea that in the future, we would establish a cost sharing for other tools that would be provided through the Security Operations Center.
I think one of your members up north had something to add.
Thank you. This is Darla Dodge for the record, GTO. In answer to your question, Senator Neal, we were allocated $2.5 million for our current ARPA project, or CMS project.
Okay. Thank you for that. So in AB1, it also allows you to apply for, I mean, you've been able to apply for federal grants. Maybe it just doubled down. So have you applied for any federal grants?
Thank you for the question, Senator Neal. The primary federal grants that we're working on right now and that we have had awarded for support of Security Operations Center, once again, Timothy Galuzzi for the record if I didn't hit that, is through the Office of Emergency Management. And those are the state and local cybersecurity grants. And so we have been pretty successful in receiving those grant dollars. Obviously, the federal shutdown has slowed some of those efforts down pretty significantly, but we are confident that will be that funding will definitely work to help us jumpstart that Security Operations Center and get it operationalized.
So so how much was that grant, and have you applied for any grants that also cover any other areas other than that?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I'm not sure if my CISO, Bert Carroll, up north has those in front of him, but we can definitely follow back up with those state and local cybersecurity grant numbers for you. And then as far as other grants, we have been working with the Office of Federal Assistance to do some research with us to see if there are other grant opportunities that we could potentially go after. But it seems right now the best opportunities are through that state and local cybersecurity grant program.
Okay. I was just super curious because when it says sustain enterprise CMS after ARPA bridge funding is over, that means you're going to come forward with clearly a request for appropriation. And so I was just wondering about, I guess I'll ask come 27 if there ended up being a cost allocation agreement between NSHE and CCSD, because I'm almost positive you're not going to do anything for them for free, right?
Thank you for the question, Senator. If given the opportunity to leverage those general funded services, then there is a conversation to have about is that a priority for the legislature to continue those via general fund. But our typical model is to cost allocate the services that are provided. But we do that via cost pools. And so we wouldn't cost allocate out services that are executive branch only, like the CMS project that's discussed in here. We wouldn't be cost allocating those services out to NSHE or municipals. It would just be the direct security operations center services that they'd be receiving.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions? I do have a second bite at the apple coming from Assemblymember Nguyen, but wanted to make sure that nobody else had a question. Do we have any questions in Carson City?
A little louder, no.
Thank you. We will go back to Assemblymember Nguyen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure that we uplift this too, because I know we've been talking about one part of the conversation in terms of agencies, but we want to look at ahead in terms of how Nevada is in terms of our state, and we are a very diverse population now, and especially in my district, we have a lot of folks that moving into Nevada that is not originally from here, and I want to make sure that the language access is important in terms of looking at cybersecurity incidents, that there's a lot of folks who have language barriers, and I referenced my mother earlier in the conversation, is that they have a lack of understanding of how these things work or doesn't work. And so in terms of our strategy in the future, looking at how we can kind of put a system-wide policy when it comes to different agencies interacting with the public. Like you mentioned earlier, certain agency, like we know for public knowledge that the IRS, for example, will never contact you by any means other than the postal office, right? They will just send you a letter in the mail. They don't text you, they don't call you, right? Are there strategy for us to, outside of the .gov piece that you mentioned, to have agencies be communicating out through the public, the kind of like the barn end that, the Department of Health and Human Services or the Department of Business and Industry will only communicate to you via X, right? Just so that from a language access point, we don't have that kind of misinformation out there. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on some of these things that we think about when we interact with, all member of our states.
Thank you for that, Assembly member. We have a very mature and robust public information officer community, thankfully, within the executive branch. That was one of the hidden jewels that we discovered during our cyber incident, is that we have a very strong network of PIOs. And so I'm sure that they would be open to having that conversation about the modality of communications from their entities out to the public. I know one of the great things about our new content management system is because it is a modern-based content management system for web hosting, that the translation services on that are, from what I understand, really good. But I like your point about, official communications would only come from these channels, and being able to identify that to our constituents would help mitigate some of these issues that we're seeing.
So I look forward to hearing, some of the best practices that you have, as well as some of the things that the agency already are doing that perhaps we just need to uplift. So we'll take this offline and let us know how we can be helpful, because I want to make sure that we don't just cover one segment of the population, but all Nevadans, so that they can continue to be correctly informed. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, we will continue to work with you offline. I know definitively we want to ensure that from this interim work, We have language around AI to help you do your job, to help protect Nevadans, and that we're moving in, at least in what we can, in the right direction. So we will continue to reach out, and as ideas come up, please do reach out.
Once again, Timothy Galuzzi, for the record, thank you for that, Chair. And we've definitely appreciated all the support that the legislature has given us since November and moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you again.